What's up, guys? Welcome to an all-new episode of Convos on the Pedicab. Today, I am joined with Start again. Oh, shit, it's live, right? All right. Sorry, this is my first live episode. Anyway, welcome to an all-new episode of Convos on the Pedicab featuring the one and only Robert Morrow. Robert Morrow is actually the former chair of the Travis County Republican Party. He unsuccessfully ran for school board for the State Board of Education in place 5, I believe, this past year. I'm actually kind of sad that he lost his primary spot, but we're going to talk about that later. But anyway, just before we go any further, Robert and I, we're standing, we're actually, it's a different setup right now. We're actually sitting 6 feet apart from one another because Robert is a type 2 diabetic. He hasn't made very good life choices with his diet and exercising.
I'm not a diabetic. I'm just overweight. Okay.
Yeah, so we're standing 6 feet apart for Robert's health.
Don't spread that
Robert.
misinformation, but go ahead.
Sorry, buddy. Well, we're 6 feet apart. In all seriousness, we're doing it because we want to look out for the health and safety of all of our guests. This is inclusive. This is about bringing everybody onto the show. That being said, Robert Morrow, we're so happy to have you here. Just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into politics to begin with.
Okay, well, I'm originally from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. I'm 56 years old. I got into politics a long time ago. Back in the 1980s, the first ballot I ever cast was for Walter Mondale for president in 1984. And then I followed that up with voting for Michael Dukakis in 1992. How about them apples, Alex? You probably didn't know that.
You learn something new every day, Robert, and you were out voting before I was even born, which is another fun fact.
Yes, amazing. And then 1992, one of my proudest votes ever, I voted for the Libertarian Andre Morrow, Marrou. And he was running against Bush, the father, and Bill Clinton. And I was so excited to support Ross Perot, but he kept getting in and getting out and getting in and getting out. And I said, "What are you doing, Perot?" So I voted Libertarian.
I honestly think Perot would have won if he had been consistent that year.
Well, Perot wasn't trying to win because he was secretly trying to elect Bill Clinton. He was secretly communicating with Bill Clinton. He hated George Herbert Walker Bush because he knew about the government CIA drug smuggling in the 1980s. He was enraged about it. But the problem is Bill Clinton was running drugs too.
He was doing it right out of Mena, Arkansas.
Yeah, and so it makes me wonder what was Ross Perot thinking. So then after that, I voted Republican in 1996 and really became a Republican in the mid-90s because I figured, well, the Libertarians are never going to win, I'll vote Republican. And then I voted for George Bush for president. It was a huge mistake in the year 2000. A warmongering nut job from a crime family. But I wasn't focused on deep politics back then. Then I supported Bush for re-election in 2004.
But wait a minute. Let's back up, Robert.
Yeah.
So you said that you voted for the Libertarian
in 92.
And you liked Perot because you thought that Perot was going to expose the Bush crime family. So you kind of had to have known if you already made that decision in 92. You already knew in 2000.
Well, I didn't know the full extent of the Bush crime family in 1992. So much more has come out over then. I mean, I did not know they were running drugs, but folks, Ron Paul did. You can go to YouTube and you can find Ron Paul running for president as a Libertarian in 1998, and he said something very, very fascinating. This is 1988, Ron Paul. He said, well, it looks like, the Democrats are running drugs, talking about Bill Clinton in Arkansas. And then he said, but the Republican government's not doing anything about it, so maybe they are too. And he got it right. He got it right that Bill Clinton and the Reagan administration and Oliver North and the Bush family were all running CIA drugs in the 1980s, and Ron Paul knew that in real time and said that pretty much so on TV. It's on videotape on YouTube. It's amazing.
It's kind of amazing that Ron Paul is still alive right now, considering.
Yeah, and so Ron Paul knew that. But see, me being a somewhat average person, not really into deep politics and deep study of politics back then, I didn't really latch on to that. So it really took me to the mid-2000s after I'd supported Bush for president in 2004, Bush crime family, very bad vote of mine, okay? He's a mass murderer in Iraq. Okay.
Yeah, we can all agree on that. Yeah, of course.
And so then in 2008, Ron Paul ran for president, and I was an organizer for Ron Paul in 2008 and in 2012 in Austin, Texas. I was very glad to do that. Met a lot of great people doing that. I voted for McCain for president in 2008 because I was asked to be on the local rules committee of the Republican Party. They said, "Are you going to support the Republican Party nominee even if Ron Paul loses?" And I said, "Yes." That happened to be John McCain. I didn't really campaign for him, but I voted for him because I keep my word.
Right, of
unlike
course.
most politicians.
And I try to keep my word as well, too,
yeah, but,
Robert.
but again, I should have said no. I will never vote for McCain. But then again, I wouldn't have been put on the rules committee. And then so in 2012, I supported Ron Paul, and I guess I voted Libertarian.
Wait, so Robert, let's back this up.
Yeah.
Because as much as the public wants to hear about your voting record, I want to really hear about your your actual involvement in terms of actual involvement in terms of becoming who you are today. That's what I really want to hear about. I don't,
Well, we're about to get
your voting record's awesome, but we want to talk about how did you become Robert Morrow, the former chair of the Travis County GOP? Well, that's what we wanted. That's what the audience wants to hear.
Alex, okay. So now that you know my history, so my real turn in politics, the real turn was when I started researching the Clintons after the 2004 election, because I knew that Crooked Hillary was going to be running for president in 2008, and I said I'm going to do Oppo research on her. And so I went deep on the Oppo research and started buying hundreds of books off Amazon.com used on the Clintons. Then I started finding out, that's when I started finding out this tremendous dirt on the Bush family and how the Clintons and the Bushes are really on the same team. And they were all both running drugs in the 1980s, and they're both corrupt and crooked, just like Trump is, by the way. But I didn't know that. I didn't know the extent of the corruption until 2005, 6, 7, 8.
Well, you knew about the Union Bank, right?
Union Bank in the year...
In the 1930s, where Prescott Bush was laundering money for Nazis in New York City. And
in 2004, no, I didn't know that. But by 2005, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, I started hearing stuff like that. But, the Bushes, they also made a deal with the Iranians not to release the hostages in 1980. That's a huge crime. They were running drugs in the 1980s. Bill Clinton was running drugs in the 1980s for the Nicaraguan Contras and keeping some money for himself. So I started learning that. So you asked me when I became what I am today, which is really a nonpartisan, small L libertarian political truth teller. It was in that period. Studying Hillary Clinton, I started studying the Bushes.
So
Yep.
Two questions.
Sure.
So before you became the Republican chair, you were a delegate, right?
Well, I was a three-time delegate to the Texas State Republican Convention. I think the years were 2006, 8, and 10.
Okay. And then how did you, because you also co-authored a book. Some of you guys might not know that, but Robert Morrow actually co-authored a book with Roger Stone called The Clintons' War on Women. And I would just like to know, how did you meet Roger Stone, and how did you get in those circles, and what's your opinion of Roger today and compared to what it was when you wrote that book with him?
Well, Roger Stone is, of course, a lowlife and pathological liar who has not paid me royalties on our book that we wrote together in the past 3 years.
So, and did you not have a contract about that? Because that seems a little odd that you wrote a book together and you're not getting any money from it.
Well, he paid me the first year. I got a check for $17,000, and I got a check for $3,000. That's $20,000 of a book that sold pretty well in the year 2016. Then I got no royalties ever after that. And so I don't know how much he stole from me. I'm sure it was probably a significant amount. So you ask how I met him, this low-life creature. Well, Roger Stone in the year 2013 was going to be writing a book on the JFK assassination. He was going to be pinning Lyndon Johnson for doing it, which is what happened. That happens to be my specialty. I'm one of the world's experts on the JFK assassination. I know more about it than every university professor at the University of Texas or Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Stanford, Caltech, or MIT.
Combined, right?
Their history and their political science departments. I know more about the JFK assassination than every single professor on payroll of every major or minor college in America, okay? And it's from self-taught, okay? And so Stone quickly found out that I, quote, knew my shit on the JFK assassination, knew a lot more than he did. All he knew is that Richard Nixon was telling him that LBJ had killed JFK. Duh, no brainer. There's a lot more to support that than just Richard Nixon knowing about that.
Well, yeah, and then the Bushes were also involved with the what's called the fruit company, the United Fruit Company, or there was some fruit company in like Cuba and in Ecuador and South America. There was a whole bunch of stuff that was going on there.
We're not talking about the United Fruit coup of 1954 in Guatemala. We're talking about the JFK assassination, which actually we kind of are, because the same people that overthrew Guatemala for the CIA in 1954, people like David Atlee Phillips, E. Howard Hunt, both men were probably very, very likely involved in the JFK assassination 9 years later. Probably, very, very likely.
Yeah, and then there was Sam Giancarlo, and there was the whole mafia wanted to get
Yeah,
rid of JFK. There was a lot.
No, yeah, they ain't. It's Lyndon Johnson did it, Alex. We can talk about this later. Okay?
We can talk about that.
We don't
That's a
talk-
whole other
yeah,
episode
that's
that we
just,
can talk
that's
about.
just garbage.
JFK.
That's just garbage.
It's a
Okay.
gobbledygook, and it's good that we're talking
the
about it and people
mafia
know,
did
but
it is absolutely garbage. I'm an expert on this. We don't
Right,
want-
but
we
you don't think
we
that,
want-
like, they were
We don't want
collab-
to talk about this because it would take too long.
right, but Robert, just before we
Yeah.
pivot to the next subject,
Yeah.
you don't think that maybe they all collaborated together to off this person? Because he was a clear threat to this established order that they were trying to bring about.
No, the mafia probably had nothing to do with the JFK assassination. Look towards Lyndon Johnson, the wealthy people in Texas, H.L. Hunt, Ed Clark of Austin, who you don't even know about, elements of CIA, elements of military intelligence, anti-Castro Cubans. That's who killed JFK, not the freaking mafia. There may have been a mafioso, one or two involved. They were not running it because
that's what I was saying.
the government would not have covered up for the mafia. The government covered up for LBJ and the CIA and the oil men, but they would not have covered up for the mafia.
No. You're repeating what I was suggesting.
They would have pinned it on the mafia.
Right.
Yeah.
But you're repeating what I was suggesting in the fact that they could have had some collaboration.
Well, there was absolutely
along with that.
There was actually quite a lot. I mean, yes, collaboration in the JFK assassination with Lyndon Johnson in the very thick of it. We don't want to get.
Yeah, let's not get. All right.
Yeah.
So, what made you decide to be the Travis County Republican chair? That's the real question.
Well, the voters elected me that. So, I mean,
Right, but what made you want to run?
Why did I run?
Yeah,
okay.
why did you decide to run?
Well, I ran against James Dickey because he was unopposed, and I figured everybody needs to have some competition around here. That was a big reason, And not that I really disliked James Dickey. James Dickey once told me he was an anarcho-capitalist, and I thought to myself later, well, why the hell am I running against this guy if he's an anarcho-capitalist? That sounds pretty good. That means he's an extreme libertarian on economic issues. My God, what am I doing here? But what he really turned out to be is to be a tool of the Republican Party and with a big dose of religious right in there. And that's not anarcho-capitalism, okay? So he has other priorities. He's been a lackey for Donald Trump, as has the GOP. So enough of that. Yeah.
Understandable, but here's another thing too that a lot of my viewers might not know, even though the majority of Travis County already has this idea. And it's that anytime you put your name on a ballot, you more often than not emerge victorious. What's your strategy? What's your secret? And how did you become so good at campaigning?
Oh, I'm not. I beat James Dickey because I was probably the first name listed on the ballot, but also a lot of Ron Paulers voted for me too. I eventually got kicked out because I ran for president, but that's a higher office, and it was worth running for president. Then in the school board race, I didn't win the GOP nomination, even though I completely dominated the news. I'll give myself that.
You definitely dominated the news.
That's one thing that I have done.
You actually did win. You won the initial primary, but
leading going into a runoff is not winning.
No. But I mean, you had you.
It's kind of like when you're leading against the New England Patriots at the end of a football Super Bowl, but you end up losing anyhow.
Yes, I remember that.
That happens a lot, right?
Okay. But what I'm saying though is that you did convincingly better than every single person in that initial primary, and then you lost in the runoff.
But here's why. I'm giving you the inside baseball out, just so you'll understand. Okay?
Let's understand.
The Republican Party is male-dominated. I had two female opponents. Men are sexist and vote for men. Women are sexist and vote for women, okay? So I got 40% of the vote. The vast majority of them were men who just simply voted for me. In the Democratic primary in Travis County, they had a lot of male judges who were probably pretty good judges for being a Democrat who got wiped out for one reason only. They were a man, and women in that primary voted for a woman. So that's the secret to how I was leading coming out of that primary.
Right, but
I'm a man in the Republican Party against two female opponents.
Okay, but then you lost to a female in the runoff.
Okay, I'm giving you more inside baseball. So in a GOP runoff is a very, very small affair with just the hardcore activists, the people who know all the issues and all the people, and they're very ideological. And so they simply organize against me. My number one issue is to throw Donald Trump in jail for being a child rapist. Does your average Republican activist want that? So I knew I would easily lose in the runoff. But the point is I dominated the conversation. I got my message out. I probably got, $200,000 worth of free publicity. You know, the Wall Street Journal wrote about me, the Texas Tribune wrote about me, the Austin American Station wrote about me, KUT wrote about me. Reporters were calling me. I dominated the discourse. Most people can't even think of the name of my opponent who beat me. You can't even name her name.
Laney Pop, actually.
Oh,
Boom.
you're
I knew.
very good.
Laney Pop, but dude,
the rest don't even know who she is. She's going to lose, by the way. Go ahead.
I mean, to be honest, I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I really feel as though you speak for the children, and you know your school board race is was probably one of the most important primaries that we should have voted for here in Austin. It's really my belief. Like,
speaking for the children, absolutely, because some of my top priorities was to throw Donald Trump in jail for raping a 13-year-old girl. That's called speaking out for the children, which is what the Republican Party is not doing, and which is what Mackenzie Kelly.
Hey, wait,
Mackenzie Kelly
Robert,
is not doing that either right now. What?
Before we get to Mackenzie, I want to ask you something.
Sure.
But before we get to that, I do want to ask you something. As a school board, if you had gotten onto the school board, which I really believe you should have, and the Republican Party literally went to great lengths to try to sabotage your campaign, because to be honest, if it wasn't for COVID, you would have won that runoff. 100% you would have won that runoff, but because everyone was so stressed out economically, because people were so worried about losing their small businesses, because everyone was so worried about their civil liberties being infringed upon as a result of this virus and our government's response to it, people stopped paying as much attention to you and actively wanting to like help and campaign for you, because everyone was worried about so much other stuff that, you know, Laney Pop eked out a victory as a result. So I really do think that COVID was to blame
she beat
for
me
that.
78% to 22%. That's pretty good eking out a victory. I had no chance of winning.
I'll put it to you this way, but those numbers only existed because of COVID, and I will take that with me to the grave.
I love that excuse. I'll never take that. That's a beautiful.
I will take that with me to the grave, Robert.
If I ever need a campaign hack, I'm hiring you first.
Thanks.
You'll be the Jason Miller of the Morrow campaign.
I appreciate that. Maybe I haven't. A second
kidding.
option, depending on how things work. You know.
Yeah.
No, but I really do believe that. You know, all honesty, I really do think that I would trust you to represent, like, if I had children, I honestly, like, you know, jokes aside, conspiracy stuff aside, I really do feel as though you would be the best person who I'd feel most comfortable in terms of looking out for my kids' safety than you.
Absolutely.
And I think the reason is because you're not an establishment person, and I think the reason too.
No, it's because I'm a good guy. It has nothing to do with my politics, Republican or Democrat or Libertarian or conservative or liberal. I'm a good guy. You can count on me.
Right, but usually
I'm a very honest person.
Listen, Robert. Just not to interrupt you, but
yep.
Many people who say, "Hey, I'm a good guy," usually might not be. I'm not saying this about you.
No, that's true.
I'm not saying this about you. But
I'm gonna
let me finish and tell you why I liked you a lot as a school board candidate, and it's because you seem like the only person on that race who genuinely would respect the concerns of parents in the state when it comes to what's being taught. And when it comes to what their kids have to take in order to come to school, with like the vaccines and the shots and, you know, child safety and all that stuff, and that was really the big reason why I would have really wanted you to actually win. You know, outlandish statements and all, I really think that you would have probably represented the concerns of parents better than any other candidate.
Thank you very much, Alex. Okay, so can I get to Mackenzie Kelly right now?
Well, all right. So listen, Robert.
Yes.
So yes. I did make a promise.
Yeah.
To Mackenzie to kind of say that we're not going to talk about that out of respect to my guests.
Oh, so you let other guests determine what your other interviews are. That sounds like the mainstream media, because the mainstream media has 1,000 things that you cannot talk about. So let's talk about Mackenzie Kelly. So Mackenzie Kelly is basically a good gal, okay? But she sends out a tweet right before I go on the Alex Stringer show saying, I need to separate myself from Robert Morrow and his nonsense and behavior, whatever. And I said, well, that's interesting, Mackenzie, because you, Mackenzie Kelly, you were one of my top supporters for president in the year 2016. And here is your form saying you were a presidential elector for Robert Morrow. It says Mackenzie Kelly, and it gives her... she lived at 6800 McNeil Drive. We're leaving out the apartment.
Yeah,
number,
hey, we're gonna let's not get Robert.
And
we're not giving Robert.
Oh yeah.
Hey, Robert, we're not giving out addresses.
Yeah,
of
we're not.
people. Robert.
We are saying she's in Williamson County. And
Robert.
And her signature is on.
Okay. That's fine. But listen.
Yeah.
Just to go. Hey, Robert. Hold on.
Yeah.
I love your energy, but I want to say something in response to that.
Go ahead.
So I really don't want anybody knowing where she lives, because that's a, that's a privacy issue and whatnot.
Oh, it's in the voter records.
Okay, but that's fine. That's fine.
It's in the voter records,
right? But
okay.
No, I understand.
You can go
Robert,
pull it from the voter records.
I understand.
Anybody can.
I understand, but you don't need to do that
By the
live on
way,
my podcast. Wait.
By the way, it's in state public records
okay,
too.
I get that. My address is too with running for mayor and running for stuff.
State of Texas is in the public state Secretary of State records for 2016 for all the write-in candidates and all their 38 electors. You can get anything you want to go there.
Robert,
go ahead.
But let me respond to that.
Yeah.
Because there is a possibility that maybe Mackenzie was your elector because she just didn't want you to be the Republican Party chair, and she just did that so that you would be outed from your position.
No, she voted for me for president. Okay, so thank you, Mackenzie. I appreciate
Okay, but let me ask you a question.
I was the most qualified candidate because Donald Trump is a child rapist.
Okay. So let's
You sure are nervous and hopping around here, Alex.
I am not hopping around, Robert. I want to ask you a question about your being on the Travis County GOP. So
are we changing the subject right here?
Well, I want to ask you about that because there was a big uproar when it came to being on the Travis County GOP, and all these mainstream Republicans tried to go to like a whole multitude of great lengths and measures to remove you from that position.
True.
So what was that about, and what was their incentive to doing that? Why were they doing that? That's the $1 million question.
All right. Well, Alex, you're a little bit new to Austin, so you don't know the track record I have with the liars and hypocrites and nut jobs of the Texas Republican Party. And by that, I mean the Bush crime family, mass murder in Iraq, running drugs with the CIA in the 1980s. I bring this up, I talk about it, yet I was a Republican. Rick Perry, you showed up after Rick Perry ran for president, I guess. Well, Rick Perry is was a rampaging bisexual adulterer. I mean, he's a closet queer who cheats on his wife with both men and women, okay? And I had strippers who I would talk to who would talk about trying to have sex with Rick Perry, but they would tell me couldn't do it because he was too coked up to get it up. Okay, so Alex, you're wondering why the Republicans might have a little problem with me. You didn't know about all this because I bust their ass and tell the truth about them. So the latest psychopath of the Republican Party has foisted upon us is a guy named Donald Trump, Jeffrey Epstein's best friend for 15 years, or one of his best friends, okay, who was raping girls with Jeffrey Epstein in 1994. You don't have to believe that. I believe that, okay? So I bust on Trump. That's in the future. I busted on Rick Perry, who's really not that bad in compared to Trump or the Bushes, and then I bust on the Bushes. So you asked me why they didn't like me. That's why, because I destroy their little icons, Alex. It's kind of obvious.
So let me ask you a question. What's your take on the Republican Party chair now, Mr. Matt McCoviac? Tell me your opinion on him.
Well, it's going to be a really big test for Matt McCoviac, and it's going to be coming up about a month.
Share with the class, Robert Morrow.
About a month after the general election. And that is theoretically, there's going to be a runoff race between Mackenzie Kelly and Jimmy Flanagan. I think he's in District 6. Okay, Mackenzie Kelly has sold herself to the Republican Party and is trying to get elected to a city council seat by being totally a Republican, okay? She says absolutely nothing publicly about Donald Trump and what a psychopath and a crazed guy is and what a nut, a lunatic, and a child rapist he is. Yet she's able to somehow tweet out about me saying my behavior and nonsense, even though she used to support me for president. Wow. So the challenge is Matt McCoviac and the Republicans finally going to elect somebody in Travis County to a public office? And the answer to that is it's a coin flip, actually.
I actually think District 6 is a coin flip because of how bad of a job. I mean, and I'm saying this as somebody who actually likes Jimmy Flanagan as a person. Like, I've had beers with him. I've seen him downtown getting turned up at Rain and whatnot. He's a fun guy to hang out with. Like, he's a really cool guy to talk to. He's just horrible at his job, and all the policies that he's implementing with the Project Connect, with the gentrification, with the fact that he was supporting all these draconian lockdowns and stay-at-home orders.
Jimmy Flanagan has a campaign manager or leader who's an open Marxist.
Yeah. So that's
on Twitter.
So that's another weird.
You think those suburb people up there in North Austin are going to love having a Marxist down at City Hall?
Right, and then there's the Bulldog article about all of his finances and financial mismanagements and mishaps. It is not looking good for Jimmy Flanagan. I would hate to be in the shoes.
I'm kind of proud that one of my presidential electors might be an Austin City Council person in a couple of months.
Mr. Morrow, I do. I'll put it to you this way. I wouldn't want to be in the shoes of Jacob Aronowitz right now. That's a fact. And that's the field director or the manager for Mr. Flanagan. And I like Jacob. Like, I've hung out with him. Like, I've smoked weed with the guy. He's a pretty cool person to talk to. Like, politics aside, I disagree with him on a lot of stuff. I
never met him.
No, super nice guy. I just think that, some of the policies that some of the communist and Marxist policies are just horrifying. But I like him as a human being. Like, he's a nice person as a human being.
Okay.
That being said, I wouldn't want to be in his shoes considering all the stuff that Jimmy Flanagan has to deal with right now. And then here's another thing that
it's the perfect opportunity to beat Jimmy Flanagan a month after the general election.
This
if
is
McKenzie does not lose.
No. This is definitely.
Yeah.
You want to know my honest opinion?
Yeah.
McKenzie's got this. McKenzie should have this in the bag. This is
Mackenzie's.
This is Mackenzie Kelly's election to lose with all the stuff that's coming out.
I mean,
and all the support that she has
you
amongst
might be right.
No, this is 100% Mackenzie Kelly's election to lose, and I don't want to talk.
But isn't it great to have a Robert Morrow supporter on the Austin City Council? A presidential elector of Robert Morrow on the Austin City Council.
Robert.
That would be Mackenzie Field. She was one of my biggest supporters. She got me multiple presidential electors in 2016.
No, hey.
Yes, and I was talking about Donald Trump being a child rapist.
Robert, let's pivot to something.
No, this is the important issue.
I'm not pivoting to. I'm not trying to take your thunder away. No, we're not ending anything. I just want to ask you another question because there's so much. You're just a big ball of knowledge, and you're so enlightened, and you're probably one of the most enlightened people I've ever had, if not the most enlightened person I've had on my show. That I want to get as much. Info and much stuff out of you while we're here. So here's the other question, right? Like Jimmy Flanagan has received more money from real estate developers, I think, than any other city council candidate, right?
It's all going to flow to McKenzie after she beats him. That's the way it works, buddy.
Yo, you gotta let me finish my question, man.
Go ahead.
All right. So Jimmy's received more money from real estate developers than any other candidate. I believe maybe him and Greg Casar are the top two. Right, and all of Jimmy's decisions when it comes to like the scooters and supporting the for-profit Major League Soccer stadium at McCalla Place, where the guy's not paying any property taxes and whatnot. Everything he's doing is literally it's corporatism and runaway. Like Jimmy Flanagan's political decision making when it comes to the breaks he gives to multi-billion-dollar California companies is the definition of runaway capitalism. Yet you're hiring a Marxist to be your field director, and that's what doesn't add up. Because I actually when it comes to my take on people's policy decisions, I fully believe that like the Bernie Sanders Democrats and the Alex Jones Republicans should be the ones making our decisions in government together. Is really my belief.
Well, I want to defend that. Give me a chance to defend this bit about hiring a Marxist while you're owned by the real estate developers. Well, the Republican Party is dominated by religious right people, and they put Donald Trump in power, and he likes to rape 13-year-old girls and cheat on his wife with porn stars and Playboy models. So how's that any different, Alex? The hypocrisy.
Well, it just seems odd, and
it
just doesn't seem like it. Just when you look at when you put two and two together, it doesn't seem like it would make sense that one of the most neoliberal, runaway capitalistic candidates or office holders in City Hall has a Marxist as his field manager. That is just what's odd. Like if you were like
a Marxist, but you should be allowed to be a Marxist as long as
you should be allowed to be whatever you want.
Yeah.
It just doesn't seem like it goes
even
against
a communist,
right? But it doesn't seem like it goes along with your belief structure to represent someone like that. If he was if Louis Conway Jr. or somebody like that had Jacob Aronowitz as his campaign staff director, there'd be like some consistency because Louis Conway he was a District 1 candidate a couple of years ago. He wasn't taking, big time developer dollars like these other people were doing. So that's really my that's really where I feel confused about why you're hiring. Why do you have someone who's like a full-blown card-carrying communist managing your campaign
when you are the most district?
Yeah, for a suburban district while you are the most neoliberal person in City Hall. I don't understand. And I'm saying this as Jacob's friend. Like I like him a lot as a human being. I just don't understand why this is the case.
Well, Alex, I hate to pop your bubble, but city politics is almost always crony capitalist with the developers, and they like to give money to whoever wins. So if Mackenzie Kelly beats Jimmy Flanagan, she'll get the money. If Jimmy Flanagan beats her, he'll get the money. I hate to tell you,
but why are you But why are you hiring? Why are you having a card-carrying communist be your field manager when that's the case? Like, that's just what.
Well,
that's
you
what
got to
doesn't make
nail
sense.
down all the liberal socialist vote too. You know, it's what politics is. You try to have a blending of different constituencies. So keep the next issue. Come on.
But it does seem like selling out. It seems like selling out. That's the thing. All right. So next issue, Robert.
Yeah.
Explain the hat, because I love the hat. Explain why you chose to wear the hat.
Well, Alex, you mean my jester's hat?
The jester hat, yeah.
Okay, I'm a politician. It's a consumer reform that I'm pioneering right here. Okay, So I'm wearing a jester's hat, being a politician. It's kind of like it alerts the public there's a politician around. Okay, it's a safety measure, and so I'll keep wearing it. I'm also a presidential historian.
Oh.
And I also wear my hat too as a presidential historian. I wear two hats, but it's the same hat. Go ahead.
No, it represents what politics are on face value.
Did you see a better answer would have been, did you see the Trump-Biden debate last night? And you're asking me why I wear a jester's hat? Really?
I did see the Trump-Biden debate. It was
I'm a little slow writing my material. I need some help.
You're doing good, man. You're killing it, Robert. So anyway, what was your take on the debate? What do you think? Who do you think won? What do you think is going to happen as a result going forward?
Okay, I think, and I've been saying this for 2 years now, that Donald Trump has a 0% chance of re-elect. I'm voting for, by the way, I'm one of his opponents. I'm Robert Morrow, running for president as a write-in candidate. You can write me in. I got to get the plug in.
No, please.
All right, but see, I talk to a lot of, I'm kin to a lot of Trumpkins, and I know a lot of Trumpkins from being a former GOP activist, okay? So I know a bunch of them, okay? Probably more than Democrats. They're all like delusional right now. They all think that Trump's going to win, or in some way he has no chance of winning. Okay, he's a loser. But ask me why.
Yeah, I'd like to hear why.
Okay, why? Because he's pissed off so many people. See, Trump has hardened the political lines to where 40% of America likes him and 55% of America doesn't. You can't win elections when you're down 55-44. You just can't do that.
Yeah,
it's a fantasy.
Right, but here's the thing, though. His opponent has no enthusiasm. There's no enthusiasm for Joe Biden.
All right. Again, I'm kin to Trumpkins. I know a bunch
I'm just telling you. I'm telling you objectively.
They always tell me this.
I'm just telling you objectively.
Okay,
There's no enthusiasm for Biden.
You're incredibly wrong. They don't have enthusiasm for Joe Biden. They just hate Trump, and that is enough. So the Republican Party has an incompetent guy in as president right now who's going to get absolutely blown away. You're going to lose the presidency. You're going to lose the Senate. You're going to keep losing the House. You're going to lose the popular vote. You're probably going to lose Lindsey Graham in South freaking Carolina. How can you lose a Republican in South Carolina?
I don't, to be fair, first of all, A, you're wrong, and B,
okay.
Your
turn. Go ahead.
And B, I dislike Lindsey Graham too, especially since he's trying to make, Bill Gates. He talked about making Bill Gates the head of the World Health Organization. So once he started talking about that, you gotta, you have to cut that off and understand where his allegiances lie.
Right.
Not to be spouting Bill Gates conspiracy theories, but
and he's a warmongering nut. He's a warmongering nut job too. He's a neocon freak.
Look, you shouldn't make a computer nerd with no medical degree the head of the World Health Organization.
Okay.
That's all.
All right, but I mean, I'll be quiet here and say, you tell me why Trump is going to win. Go ahead.
Okay.
Your turn.
Because there's no. There's, yeah. Thank you, Robert. Appreciate that. No, I think that so A, there's no support at all for Biden, and there is still the enthusiasm for Trump is so much amongst his supporters that Trump could, no matter how much he fucks up, there's always an excuse for that guy, and that's the truth. Let me finish. Okay. I know you're excited. Let me finish.
I'm always excited.
They're very there's always an excuse for Trump, and secondly, Biden's performance kind of alienated himself from the radical left as a result of yesterday. And so in order for a Democrat to win, the progressive wing of the Democratic Party needs to vote for that person. And so A, they're very upset. There's still a lot of these progressives are extremely upset about how Bernie Sanders was treated by the DNC, rightfully so. And B, Joe Biden literally said on camera that he wasn't going to institute any of these policies that these far left Democrats want from a candidate. So after watching that debate, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of these far lefties and the big hardcore Bernie Sanders supporters are going to stay home. They're going to be a lot more of these people staying home as a result of the fact that Biden did not really have a strong stance on anything in that debate. And granted, Trump, look, it looked like two school children fighting at recess. None of them looked good, but Trump brought Biden down to
jester's hat, but go ahead. Yes.
Look, Trump brought Biden down to his level, and he succeeded in doing that. And as a result, the enthusiasm for Joe Biden, while it's already low, has gotten lower through what I'm saying to you.
My turn?
Sure.
Okay. Well, the Democrats are wounded, they're scarred, they're scalded, they're terrified. They hate Trump. That's what motivating them, not a love of Joe Biden. Donald Trump would make a great sadistic abortionist, okay? If you gave him a partial birth abortion, he would go to town with it. And the Democrats look at him and think, that could be me, okay? And so the polling in all the swing states, more extensive this time, all Biden everywhere.
Do you really trust the polling?
Absolutely.
Have you gotten polled?
James Dickey told me, he says, Robert, we did some polling between you and me before our race. You were at 16%, I was at 10%. And I told everybody in the room, if we don't do something, Robert is going to win this race. And I beat him. 55% to 45, or maybe 56 to 44. Yeah, polling.
I think polling always favors the Democrat, though.
Well, me and Dickie were in a
You're both Republicans, but polling
race
historically,
with just two candidates, and he says the polling says Robert is going to win. He was right.
Right, but Robert, polling always historically favors the Democrat. A and B. There are so many people that are like, look, man, being and I'm not saying this like as someone I'm pretty neutral politically, but just from an objective standpoint. Being a Trump support, like coming out as a Trump supporter, is literally the same thing as, coming out of the closet as being gay in the 1980s or 90s. Like it's so there are a lot of silent Trump supporters of all these demographics that are gonna say what they feel at the voting booth without wanting to say anything. And some of them, even when they're being polled, might not even want to share who they're voting for. Okay,
we'll do something that's very useful. We'll just agree to disagree. You think that Trump's going to be reelected? I think it's a no-brainer that Biden will win. What other topic do you want to talk about?
So let's talk about mainstream Republicans and our hatred for them.
Oh, well, Mackenzie Kelly.
I don't want to talk about.
Hold on.
We already talked about it enough. I want to just talk about generally.
She says she's a moderate Republican. Okay, now is that mainstream or moderate? I mean, that seems like. What are you talking about when you say mainstream Republicans? She says she's a moderate Republican.
I don't want to even talk about. I don't want to talk about Mackenzie anymore.
Okay. All right. So what about you're saying about we hate the mainstream?
I'm talking about the Greg Abbotts, the Greg Abbotts,
No, the mainstream Republicans are the Trumpkins now, Alex. There's been a change.
No, they're not.
There's been a change.
No, it's like the Lincoln Project, never Trumpers. It's like the Bushes are the mainstream Republicans. The Greg Abbotts are the mainstream Republicans.
Now. No, see, the Republican Party is smaller. You didn't figure that out. That's why it's going to lose. When you lose 5 to 10% of your party, you don't win national general elections. And when the two parties were closely even.
Listen, man, I've been a registered Democrat my entire life, and I still haven't changed my registration as a result of that. But the shutdowns and the way people are covering the protests and the misinformation that these liberal Democratic leaders are giving us as a result of the virus, and the fact that they're just deliberately, it seems as though they're perpetuating these shutdowns to continue going on as long as possible, almost indefinitely, it's making me not want to vote Democrat. And I'm considering, honestly, voting GOP in this election as a result of how a lot of these Democratic leaders have destroyed their economies from COVID. And a lot of people, Robert, a lot of people who used to be Democrats really feel the same way. I think the Republican Party is actually a bigger tent now than it was in 2016 because of all this COVID stuff.
So you're saying,
because of these protests.
You're saying you're scarred and wounded because the economy got shut down, the bars and restaurants got shut down, and your pedicab business had a brick thrown at its face.
And right? there was no look. Luckily, the CARES Act stuff kind of worked out, right? But they shut us down with no plan in place as to how they were going to help us. And even with the bars and the music venues, our mayor shut down all of that stuff in March, and it's only now 6 months later that they're finally coming up with an item to help give aid to these organizations when they're trying to push a multi-billion-dollar Project Connect, when they're trying to expand the convention center, spend millions of dollars, when they've donated $60 million to enable vagrancy. I mean, what do you expect, dude? Like, it's what they're doing in terms of how they're treating people in the service industry, how they're treating the venues that make up the core of Austin, they're throwing them by the wayside. It's a slap in the face to everybody who lives here. Like, you see these Democratic politicians do this on a constant basis.
Right.
Why would you vote for these people? It makes no sense. Why would you do it?
Because they're going to give you a check for Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security and food stamps. You didn't figure that out,
right?
buddy?
But I don't
Housing.
want that stuff. I just want to be able to make a living.
Why do you vote Democrat? 'Cause that's what
Well,
it's all
I'm
about.
not gonna vote, but that's what I'm saying, though, man. Like, after all this, after their response to COVID in terms of how they instituted the shutdowns, in terms of how they're perpetuating all this misinformation and fear mongering as a result of this virus, and how they're painting a completely different narrative about hey, don't go spend time with your friends, don't go celebrate the 4th of July, but it's okay to go out and riot and whatnot. They're literally doing stuff that's dividing the American people, and I just can't get behind that anymore, man. Like, that's it. Like, I just can't get behind it.
Okay, that is your issue. Okay, I do not deny that. I acknowledge that. I recognize that. I honor it. Okay.
Okay. No, fair.
Most of the country hates Trump for a million different reasons, and they're going to toss him out. They're going to toss out many Republicans for many. I'm not going to go into the reasons why. Both his personal style, he's a low-life criminal, pathological, lying,
I think that may have been true if it wasn't for
adulterer,
COVID.
sadistic, sick, evil, vile man. And then on top of all that, you have religious right politics being shoved down the throat of much of the country right now.
I actually feel like that's less than it used to be.
When a suburban woman tries to get her daughter to have an abortion and it's banned in a state, there will be hell to pay for the Republican Party. In fact, Texas, if they ban abortion in Texas, you could very well see Democrats taking over the legislature and every major office in Texas, statewide.
Yeah, I think the
And
Republican.
they're poised to do that.
I think the Republican Party has kind of shifted, though, because I would have agreed with you in 2008 and 2004 when Bush was running and whatnot. Then I felt as though the Republican Party was very much about like the religious right and fake virtue signaling and right-wing social justice while you're perpetuating all these foreign wars. But I feel like now the Republican Party is just more about reopening the economy and not wearing masks, which I'm kind of like more on board. Like, I'm kind of on board with that, to be honest.
Shelley Luther probably going to be elected.
I love Shelley, dude. I love Shelley Luther. I think she's an American hero, to be honest.
She's a hot blonde, isn't she? Right? Can we
look,
throw that in there too?
As somebody who's in a
we need a hot blonde in the Texas State Senate who's a right-wing radical, maybe.
I don't think she's a right-wing radical. I think she's just a normal libertarian person who just wants to operate her business, and that's it.
Yeah, and I agree.
I think
with
she's
that.
she's a reasonable human being who genuinely wants to help everybody, and she does not care about skin color. I've met her at the Capitol. Did you know that? And I met her at the Capitol. I met like her people at the Capitol. I've got along with her really well. And and so right before she talked, there was this a couple weeks prior to that, there was this like Hispanic lady in Laredo, Texas, who got arrested for giving haircuts in her apartment so she can like go make a living and pay for her bills and like take care of her kids and whatnot. And so one of the things I asked her was, hey, what are y'all doing about this Hispanic lady in Laredo, Texas, who got arrested for giving haircuts? Are y'all trying to help her? And she's like, yeah, we wrote a whole thing out. She was actually speaking at the Capitol. We are doing whatever it is in our power to actually try and help that person. I talked to her about how I think we need to start offering comprehensive financial education to people in low-income Black and Hispanic neighborhoods to get more people to develop develop financial equity and participate in capitalism and increase their stock market participation. She was down. She like fully supported that. I liked her a lot. Yeah,
that's a great idea. Maybe Donald Trump should take that class too on financial education. Because he owes $1 billion freaking to somebody, probably overseas Russian oligarchs.
Hey man, I'm not arguing with you about that. I'm just saying that I like Shelley Luther, and I think that
I like her too.
Shelley Luther is somebody who she should be what the Republican Party is about. Is my honest opinion.
Probably win her runoff, don't you think so? Probably.
I think she'll probably win a race, dude. I like her. I really like Shelley Luther a lot. Like she was a really nice person. She was very down to earth. She was approachable. She was cool. I really like her a lot. So, and this is from having an actual conversation with her and talking to her about a multitude of issues. She seems like she genuinely would want to do the right thing. So, but we'll see. Once people get in office, and depending on who they're getting their donations from, that does all change the game. So.
All right. What else you want to talk about? Because how much time? How much time
do we have? What time is it, Charlie? So So 45 minutes. We're probably gonna wrap it up kind of soon. I'm trying to think.
No, let's keep talking. Let's keep talking. We don't need to wrap it up. We're having fun.
We're having fun.
We're at the 45-minute mark.
Well, we can probably go
We got
another
10 more
5.
minutes?
Yeah, 5-10 minutes. Yeah.
Okay,
we got
fire
5-10
away.
minutes. Yeah, let's do that.
Anything? All right, go ahead.
The governor. I want to talk about Governor Abbott.
Okay, go
Because
ahead.
I really when it comes to my take on mainstream conservatives, and so I don't think Shelley's a mainstream conservative at all.
No.
No, I think she's what the conservative Republicans should be like, and then Governor Abbott is what I hate. He embodies what I hate about
Yeah,
conservatives.
but you know what? I think she's pro-life, and that's going to be a big issue.
I
If Roe v. Wade gets overturned, you're going to see Republicans lose races over the abortion issue.
I agree
in
with that.
Texas. And I think they'll lose the governor's mansion because of that one issue.
Listen, man, when it comes to abortion, that's just an issue I don't give a shit about. I want lower taxes. I want to be able to operate. I want to be able to just give pedicab rides. I want to make smart investments. I want to drink clean water. I don't want, if I own a house, I don't want to have private companies and
Alex,
city officials using eminent domain to
one
do
question
stuff to my
for you.
property.
One
Like
question for you.
that's all that matters to me.
One question for you. Are you a male or female? Can you get pregnant?
Cannot get pregnant, Robert Morrow.
See, Rick Perry is pro-life too. Did you know that?
Well, all these
But hold on,
Republicans
hold
are
on, but I'm not
pro-life
done.
because it's a
Hold on.
political strategy.
No, but I'm not done. Because you can't get pregnant when you're fucking other men in the ass. Okay? Okay? Rick Perry is pro-life. And a very prominent journalist told me in 2013 that Karl Rove was a closet homosexual. I'm not saying I believe that. I was stunned. I said, that's probably a 50% chance of being true. And then he said that Jeff Gannon, this completely fake reporter in the White House, you can Google this. Google Jeff Gannon. You will see the President of the United States, George W. Bush, kissing the head of a bald-headed gay prostitute named Jeff Gannon. Google George Bush, Jeff Gannon, Google images. Okay? Why was there a fake homosexual reporter in the White House who's a fake reporter who is a long-time homosexual prostitute in Washington, D.C.? So that's what I mean. These Republican men who don't care about abortion, just soon criminalize it. If you're fucking other men in the ass, nobody gets pregnant, okay? Women get pregnant. They want to control their reproductive rights.
All right, Robert, question.
Yes.
How do you feel about the coronavirus and the shutdowns, and what's your take on all that stuff?
Okay, I'm against any kind of government mandates of shutdowns of masks or closing businesses at all. However, people should be willingly wearing masks and taking precautions on their own.
I agree with that. So what's your take on mask wearing, and when do you think it's appropriate to wear a mask, and when do you think it's appropriate not to wear a mask?
Well, we probably should be wearing masks right now, but I kind of just guess that Alex probably doesn't have COVID.
I'm guessing you don't. We're having faith in each
other.
other.
And you're a little too close, but that's a chance you take in life. And see, that's the whole point. The individuals should be allowed to take that chance. If I were in New York City 8 months ago and everybody's dropping dead left and right of COVID,
wear a mask.
I'd be like, I don't want to shake anybody's hand ever, and I'm wearing a mask and I'm walking 20 feet away from everybody I see.
Yeah.
So you let I'm a libertarian. You let the individual determine their risk preferences.
Yeah.
So you asked me how I feel about government mandating all this stuff. I'm against it, but I'm for people voluntarily protecting themselves. Like Shelley Luther's beauty salon was ready to voluntarily protect themselves.
They were, and they actually were wearing masks originally, and that was one of the things that she stipulated, which is a good thing too.
Yeah.
I think, look, there's a time and a place for mask wearing. I think that when you're inside of a grocery store, put your mask on because you never know who you're going to come across. I think that if you're in a hardware store, you should probably put a mask on just in general because of all the shit you're breathing in when you're at a hardware store. But if you're at a gym and you're doing a set at a gym or you're doing a circuit at a gym, you should probably have your mask off while you're mid-set because you don't want to lower your oxygen supply to your body and your lungs and whatnot and give yourself hypoxia and do all that stuff. You don't want to do it while you're at a gym.
That's why I haven't been back to goals because you have to wear a mask right now.
I take when I'm doing my circuits and stuff there, I take my mask off during my circuits and I try to go far away from people to be considerate. But you have to be on.
Do they let you take your mask off?
Well, I just have it down here.
Okay.
I don't take it off fully, but I just have it at my chin.
Yeah.
And I do, and I try to be far, far, far apart from people when I do the circuits, and I position myself in an area where I'm not around people out of consideration.
Yes.
But if you think I'm wearing a mask while I'm doing circuit training, you're on drugs. Yeah, I'm not doing that.
Gotcha.
I also think that if you're at a restaurant, you should put a mask on when you're talking to your wait staff and when you're talking to your bartender and stuff like that, just for 2 seconds. But, once you're at your table or once you're outside, I don't really see the need very much for mask wearing when you're outside breathing fresh air.
Humans have figured out how we need to handle this, how the risk preferences that we need to take. Humans are figuring it out. Government should not be telling us this. So I'm a small L libertarian on that. Yes.
Yeah, and I agree. Okay, so we're on the same page about that. What do you think about the whole police stuff? The whole defund APD? What's your take?
Okay, I think the left has lost their freaking mind. Most policemen are probably pretty good people. I do not see a problem with systematic racism in America or in policing. George Floyd, in my opinion, was murdered. Okay, throw the cop.
Yeah, I think he was murdered. Yeah,
throw the cop in jail for that. Charge him with murder. But all these other things, when the guy steals your taser and points it at you, well, you might get shot if you do that to a cop. If you steal his taser and you start pointing at him. So, defund the police. Look, every city should be allowed to determine how many cops they have. Austin, being a liberal town, can scale it up and scale it down. Greg Abbott does not need to be coming in here saying, Austin, you must have so many policemen. That's not his business, okay? That's our business to figure out, okay? Even though I may be outnumbered by liberal wackos, I don't want the governor of Texas to tell local cities how they should run their police departments.
Right, but yes. In fairness to Greg Abbott, if Greg Abbott didn't intervene when it came to opening, we would still be closed.
I don't get that. If he didn't interview...
If Greg Abbott didn't reopen the state back in May and didn't make it so that his mandate was the final say when it came to reopening, Austin would still be closed. And that's a fact, dude. That is a fact. So that's my...
both the state and the cities were out of bounds on the mandates. How about
everybody's out of bounds on this.
How about that? They're all out of bounds.
I think that he was out of bounds when he just randomly closed the bars again in June, while they already purchased their whole weekend supply of liquor, which is tens of thousands of dollars, to a struggling business that had that are probably going to have problems staying afloat and whatnot as a result of COVID and coronavirus. And he gave these businesses almost no time to actually shut down again without a plan as to how these venues are going to be justifiably compensated. So I actually am very upset by how Greg Abbott decided to reclose the bars. It made me lose a lot of respect for him. But Greg Abbott's never been a real conservative. The
governor and the city should not be doing all that.
No, I agree. But last year they did State Bill 335, I think. I don't remember the exact number, but they basically made it a felony to protest a oil and gas pipeline at the site. So it pretty much took away your right to protest whether or not a critical infrastructure project is going to be built on your property.
Right.
And that is the most un-American and unconservative thing that you can do as a Republican governor. The fact that you were willing to sign that into law, it shows where your priorities lie.
Well, Alex, they passed a law saying you cannot promote the divestiture from Israel or you will not get a government contract. Did you know that?
I did know that, but yeah. Look, I'm a Jew. I have a Star of David tattoo on my arm.
How do Jews with Star of David on their arms stand on freedom of speech?
Support freedom of... No, I get your perspective. I'm gonna say one sentence about that.
Yeah.
Israel has a right to exist as an independent, sovereign country.
I disagree.
Now, as a Jew, look, man. As a Jew, this is just something you might not fully understand, and that's okay. No offense to you. You just might not fully get it.
Fine.
Just as a Jew, this is something you might not fully understand.
I definitely don't. Yeah.
Israel has a right to fully exist as a sovereign nation. But that being said, people should have free speech. But Israel has the right to fully exist as a sovereign nation, and that's all I'm saying.
Okay, well, all right.
But I don't want to go.
No, but the key point is Greg Abbott says you cannot advocate divesting from Israel, or we're going to stop all of your government contracts. Where do you stand on that, Mr. Free Speech, Alex Dinger?
Yeah, look. You got to support free speech.
Nowhere, right?
No, you're not even listening to me. Jesus Christ, dude. You talk and then you
Jews
talk.
Were invoking Jesus Christ.
No,
hey, you are a good guy. I'm just kidding.
You talk and then you don't give me a chance to.
I'm just kidding.
All right, I love you, buddy. But all right, listen.
That's a joke.
I'm laughing on the inside, Robert Morrow.
Okay.
All right. Look, I support free speech no matter how offensive or whether or not I disagree with it.
I should have said, "Oi, you're not defending free speech."
No,
But you are.
Yeah.
But you are. Okay.
I don't agree. I don't agree with the BDS movement. I think it's a horrible movement. But I support your right to share how you feel, and that's it. All right.
Okay.
That's literally it. I feel like
I figured you would say that.
Yeah. I disagree with that movement entirely.
Right. I understand that.
As a Jew, I fully disagree with it. But I think that people should have free speech because if you cancel one person's free speech, then it's a slippery slope, and that's something we can't do. So that's my hot take on that.
Okay.
Where were we going? We were really
we're almost done.
We're almost done, but we were talking about something that I wanted to keep talking about. We were talking about
Greg,
Governor Abbott. We were talking about
you don't like Governor Abbott.
I do not like Governor Abbott at all.
Yes.
I do not. And he wants people to sign this like bullshit back the blue pledge. And look, I don't like how our city defunded APD, and the big reason why I don't like how our city defunded APD is because A, they cut the wrong program. So I think that if you watch the this is what we're talking about. Okay, if you saw the George Floyd videos, if you saw the Mike Ramos videos, if you saw Jacob Blake, those all of these horrible accidents occurred because our cops are not trained properly. Literally occurred from lack of training. If Derek Chauvin knew how to hold proper side control, George Floyd would be alive. There was no need to kneel on that guy's neck at all. If our cops were better able to keep their cool.
By the way, he was looking at the crowd, and they were saying stop it. He would like press the knee down even harder.
Yeah, it's
like,
that guy was a sick bastard. That guy was
really sick.
And if you saw the initial video of it,
yeah,
they immediately went into George Floyd's car and just pulled out a gun on him out of nowhere. The whole way in which that whole situation was handled is an absolute travesty. So that guy Derek Chauvin definitely needs to go to jail for murder. The other cops, they were trying to kind of like do the right thing, but they were just so powerless and helpless, and they were just so unable to like do their job at the moment that they probably should never be on a beat again. They should probably be behind a desk for the rest of their lives after that's over with. Yeah. With Mike Ramos, dude, there was no reason for that guy to get shot at all. My opinion. I'm not an expert. I'm not in law enforcement. I don't know what they go through, but as an objective citizen watching that, they could have definitely done a better job of de-escalating that situation before they shot him.
With Mike Ramos.
Well, you should watch the video.
Okay.
And then Jacob Blake, two cops were pinning him down, and he got up. And I'm like, dude, if you had any modicum of wrestling ability, you should have been able to just hold him down there without having to resort to shooting this guy in the back. So this is a product of bad training.
Because they figured there was a gun in the car. People go to the cars to get their guns.
I get that, Robert, but the fact is he shouldn't have been able to even get up to go to his car. If they were proficient enough in grappling, they would have kept him on the ground, and then it would have been a clean arrest, and nothing would have happened.
So how do you feel about female cops? Do you think they're proficient in grappling?
I think that should be a requirement. I think that everyone in APD should have to have at least a blue belt or above in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and they have to train at least 2 to 3 times a week in order to keep being cops. And I also think that we should put money aside for them to be EMT certified also, because many times they're the first people on the scene of a horrific accident. And
that might be a good idea. Having cops being EMT certified, that might actually be a really good idea.
That's a phenomenal, and you would save a countless number of lives, and it would totally reshape the narrative for how police officers are even being viewed.
That's a great idea.
They need to do that.
That's a great idea.
That should be priority number one, and that's it. That's what you got to do. If you really want to solve this problem and make this better, you got to do that. You got to put more money aside for community policing. You got to do an audit about wasteful spending within these departments. And let's just say this. If our city is going to cut $170 million, I've said this so many times on the show, from APD's budget, give some of that money to the venues that are most affected by our decision to close. None of that money has gone to the bars, the live music venues, or even childcare centers, really. Why is it that not a single penny has gone to any of these venues that were most affected by the shutdowns? Like, if you were going to defund APD's budget to actually save the small businesses that were most affected by COVID, nobody would be complaining, minus the exception of a few super right-wing wackos. But you're misallocating the funding.
I don't care about giving money to bars or restaurants. I couldn't care less. I'm one of your super right-wing wackos. So,
I guess but I
wouldn't have shut them down in the first place.
Exactly, but I wouldn't shut them down in the first place. But if you're going to do that, with all that stuff being said,
yeah, I see what you mean.
Yeah, considering that you shut these bars down and you're destroying their ability to sustain themselves when they make up the lifeblood of Austin, you would think that should be priority number one in terms of where you reallocate your funds. But you're not doing it, and that's why it's such a hot button divisive issue. If you were to literally just put that money towards supporting the small businesses that you stopped from operating, you would have done a lot of damage control, but you didn't do it. I don't understand how people could be this inept at their job. That's really my rant about that whole situation.
I rant too. Yes.
I know. All right. Anyway, we've been doing this for close to an hour. I feel like we probably covered a lot of stuff, didn't we, Robert?
We covered a lot of stuff. It's been fun. We did a lot of jousting and sparring and debating and even agreeing sometimes.
Yeah. No, I really enjoyed having you on. This is great. And I just before we wrap up, actually, some of you guys might not know this, but Robert Morrow actually endorsed me to be the mayor of Austin 2 years ago, and that was
he was most qualified candidate for mayor. Alex Stringer was. That's why I endorsed him.
Well, I mean, unfortunately, that actually is true considering the talent pool that I was dealing with and whatnot. But I mean, this is a big election in terms of what's going on in the city too. But you know, we've been here for close to an hour. I'm really happy and honored that somebody as esteemed as Mr. Robert Morrow came on the show and took time out of his schedule to talk to me. So I really appreciate that. And thank you, Robert. This has been a lot of fun.
It was an honor to be here, Alex. Maybe some other time in the future.
Oh, definitely. What do you mean maybe? Definitely.
Let's do it one day.
You're going to come back.
Sure.
You got to come back, Robert Morrow.
Had a great time.
It was fun. All right. Are we going to shake hands? Can we touch each other? What are we doing?
No,
you want to hug it out? You want to hug it out, Robert?
I do a Japanese bow and I say aloha. Aloha.
Aloha, Robert.